we would fire, try to hit those caves. And then when we got close, they'd move their weapons out and down another level. In fact, some areas they had 3 different levels. You were firing at nothing. It looked like, actually, it took the flamethrower outfits to work their way up to these caves and shoot a blast of flame in there to really get them out of there.
Edwin Donley served as a forward observer in the United States Marine Corps during World War II. Forward observers have one of the most dangerous jobs in the Army and Marine Corps. They operate ahead of the front lines and are tasked with analyzing the battlefield, locating Allied and enemy positions, and coordinating artillery fire support via radio. In this episode, Ed Donley recounts his experiences in the Pacific War, including the bloody battle for Iwo Jima.
Ed enlisted soon after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
I was working, and I could have got a deferment, but eventually I was going to have to go someplace. So I didn't want to go in the Army. I didn't want to go in the Navy, so I went downtown one day and joined the Marines. And there was something like 64 of us that they called the Cincinnati Platoon that went to Parris Island. And I was young and full of vim and vigor. And after Parris Island, I went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Cold, it was cold. We slept in tents, no heat. But we were only there a couple of weeks, and they sent us to Camp Pendleton, Oceanside, California, which was a complete turnaround. You know, warm weather, good food, clean shower, good Liberty, LA, and Long Beach. And we stayed there almost a year before we left for Roi-Namur in the Marshall Islands. When we got there, they were forming the 4th Division. And a Captain John Alden says, Donnelly, you're going to be a forward observer. And I didn't know what a forward observer was. I said, what's a forward observer? So I tried to explain it a little bit. We train with the artillery, but in combat, you go in with the infantry. And you seek out enemy concentrations and fire on those targets, fire the big guns on those targets. It's a hit and miss thing. I mean, it's not really easy. You have to have some place to start. I knew which way the guns were faced. Now you have to have what they call a base point, something to work from. It can be a pillbox or a blockhouse or a boulder. We'll take a pillbox, for example. I'll see a pillbox out there, and I'll judge it. Maybe it's 2,000 yards. So I'll say fire mission up 2,000, fire 1 round. So when that round comes out, I'll watch where it hits. So I go past it and to the right of it. So I'll say, again, this is all estimate. I'll say down 1,000, and being to the right, I'll say right 500. Fire 1 round. So they fire another round, and that was short. So that's what they call bracketing. You're short and you're long. In between there is the enemy. So you keep adjusting it until I get pretty well focused on them. Then I will call fire for effect, and all the batteries fire on that area. And also, a lot of times the infantry commander, maybe they're pinned down with a machine gun or mortar fire. He'll want us to fire on that particular, and that gets kind of hairy. I mean, you don't want to be short, or you're going to go firing into your own troops, you know. So you got to be pretty careful there. Make sure you're over anyway, your first round. Well, the first action was Roi-Namur in the Marshall Island, which was turned out to be very easily. 2 islands there, no more than a square mile wide. They connected with a little piece of land, and they had a small airstrip there. That turned out fairly easy. We had about 300 casualties, but it was over within 4 or 5 days, I think. And then we went back to Maui, which was our home base in the Hawaiian Island, a beautiful island. And our next time out, we went to Saipan and Tinian. Now, Saipan was much bigger. I don't know, maybe 5.5 miles wide and 13 miles long. It's something like 27,000 Japanese plus 7,000 Japanese Imperial Marines, they call them. And after you got off the beachheads are always rough. They're just firing down on you. They're falling around, and these Higgins boats go in, drop their ramp, and everybody goes out, and it's just like shooting fish in a rainbow for the enemy, And we one day we had an object to take Hill 600 or some number. They put numbers on it. Red Jones and I, we had just finished a fire mission, and we were surveying the results when we heard, "Will somebody please help me?" And Red said, "That sounds like Mac." And we heard it again, "Will somebody please help me?" So we both jumped up and grabbed our rifles and ran down the hill. And it was Mac. It didn't take us long to find him. He was laying on his back behind one of these boulders, and he was maybe 35, 40 yards from where we were. And I told Red, I said, "Cover me, Red, I'll go out and get him." So as soon as I got out, they started firing the enemy from the other side. And when I got out there, he was in terrible pain. He was a friend of mine, too. His right arm was just hanging on by the strings of skin. He had one of his legs had been shattered, and he had a hole in his side about the size of a grapefruit. And he kept saying, "Ed, I ain't gonna make it." I said, "Mac, hold on. I'll go back and get some morphine, and it'll ease your pain." Well, this time I ran back in the crisscross pattern like they teach you. I found a corpsman, told him the story, and he said, "Well, I'll go out with you." I said, "No." I said, "We both can't make it. Give me the morphine and tell me how to use it," which he did. And by this time, Red had picked up 5 or 6 riflemen. So when I went back, I had a lot more firepower helping me. And I got back out there and I gave him the shot. I don't think it helped him. Anyway, he keeps saying, Ed, I can't make it. I can't make it. Finally, I said, "Bull, Mac, we're both going to make it." There was no way I could carry him. The only way I could get him back was drag him, and I laid my poncho out. And it was hard to get him on that poncho. He couldn't help at all. I'd pick him up, and then the daggone poncho had moved. It was a job getting him in. Finally, I got enough of him on there. I said, "Okay, Mac, we're ready to go." And I wasn't ready to hear what he told me. He said, "Ed, look at me. Look at me. You know I ain't going to make it. Finish me off and get the hell out of here." That hit me for a ton of bricks. My heart was pounding, my stomach was growling. I said, "God, I need help. Give me strength." So I laid down prone, all the way prone, and with my arms outstretched tried to pull. I couldn't do that. It didn't work. So I got up on my knees, and that worked. I could pull him. And when Red seen we was coming back, they opened up fire. And I finally got him back close enough where two guys came out and helped me. One of them was the corpsman that I had talked to. And he went to work on him immediately, but he couldn't do nothing. Pour sulfur on his wounds. And he had called for a stretcher bearer, and they lifted him on the stretcher. Four of them lifted him on the stretcher. And I kneeled down and talked to him, and his head's going back and forth like this. And finally, his head stopped moving, and he closed his eyes. And they took him off. Later, I heard that he had died on the way back to the aid station. I think he died right there when he closed his eyes. Mac didn't deserve to die like that. No man deserves to die like that. And there were thousands of them. Some under even worse conditions. I dreamt about that for a long time.
Not long after this experience, Ed Donley was wounded by fragments from an enemy hand grenade. He spent time in the hospital, but returned to his unit in time for one of the bloodiest chapters in U.S. Marine Corps history. The pivotal battle for the island of Iwo Jima.
There was two and a half landing strips. We needed those landing strips for several reasons. One, so when the bombers come back from bombing Japan, they had some place to sit down and refuel so they could get back. Plus another factor was when the Japs held Iwo, our bombers going over, the Japs would intercept them and then notify the homeland, Japan, that we were coming, and they would be ready for them. And then also their fighter pilots would go up and attack the bombers. So it had to be done. It was 660 miles from Japan. And it was a very important, a little rock, 2.5 miles wide, 5 miles long. We lost almost 7,800 men, either killed or wounded in some way. Iwo was a pain from the very beginning. It rained all night. We were out aboard ship. And in the morning, it was still misting, and then you get up about 5 o'clock, and the Navy feeds you good steak and eggs, you know. And then you go down and wait for the word to board your Higgins boats, and you get the word to do that. When that boat is filled up, you go out and rendezvous around in the ocean, what they call rendezvousing. That's going round and round until everybody is ready to go in. And then you can get a little seasick going around and around. And it was cold, misty. And when you get the word to go in, you go in. But when we got there, nobody expected to get what we got, and that was a volcanic ash. And you take a step and sink down a foot or so, or take 3 steps, come back 2. It was a real mess. And when they bring the guns in, or the jeeps, and everything was bogging down in the sand. Now, our original orders was to go in, make the beachhead, go in 400 yards to the first airstrip, and dig in. Well, we barely got off the beach. Everything was bogged down. And the next morning, they did get some tractors in there where they could clear off the beach and get our guns up where they could put them in place, and the infantry moved on a little bit. But all this time, you're drawing fire from the hills, from the mortar fire, rocket fire, bombs, machine gun fire. Actually, I think if the Japanese had counterattacked that first night, they could have pushed us right back out in the ocean. But luckily, they didn't. But it was a cold night, rain, and just a miserable day. Plus, we couldn't see any Japs. They're all dug in. I think it went about 3 days before I ever saw a Jap. But we knew they were there because they kept firing on us. You know? There were a lot of caves. Maybe 50 caves. I don't know. I'm guessing. And those caves, once we did set up on them, get our guns set up, well, we would fire, try to hit those caves. And then when we got close, they'd move their weapons out and down another level. In fact, some areas they had 3 different levels. And we were told that there was about 11 miles of tunnel and where they could move around, you know. Plus pillboxes that were dug in and blockhouses. And you were firing at nothing. It looked like, actually, it took the flamethrower outfits to work their way up to these caves and shoot a blast of flame in there to really get them out of there. I'm sure we helped by keeping them firing on them all the time. But the nights were bad because they kept firing rockets. They had 3 different types of bomb. There was a bomb, 500-pound bomb. Then they had two different types of rockets that were more accurate than the 500-pound bomb. The 500-pound you could hear coming, and they call them the screaming memes or something like that. You knew they were going to be close, and just the sound alone. Yeah, you wondered, am I going to get off of this island, you know? And then on top of that, you run into counterattacks, banzai attacks, hand-to-hand fighting, which luckily I never got into. Close, but I never really got into it. And that was an every day and every night experience from February the 19th to March the 16th, I think it was, 1945. We were under stress all that time. They tried to relieve us every 3 days. Sometimes they run 4 or 5 days. And then you go back, maybe get a K ration or C ration and get a little rest, and then go back up. It was about maybe the 2nd or 3rd day. Still, we haven't seen no Japs. They're there, and firing on us, but all we see, and especially at night, is the flash from the guns. So really, all I did was fire at the cave openings, and hoping we had done some harm. And not only me, there was a lot of forward observers. The thing about being a forward observer, the Japanese have artillery forward observers themselves, and we try to pick them out first, and they in turn try to get rid of the forward observer here too, so they couldn't direct the firearms to them.
So you're a prime target.
Yeah, they look for us, yeah. And sometimes they get close and you have to move, you know. It was a slow process for the infantry, simply because they couldn't see them. And we'd move a little each day. Like I say, we were supposed to go in 400 yards, the first airport. I don't know, it might have been 3 days before we got that far. And the Japs were on the other side of the airport too. But as the days went on, we would see more and more of them coming out of their caves, coming out of their pillboxes. Little groups of them sometimes. And they were going to kill somebody until they knew they were going to die. So they were going to kill somebody until they died.
Were you looking for high ground?
Well, they were up higher. It was a little slope, like maybe a 20-degree slope. Suribachi was down here, about 550 feet high. And Mount Suribachi on the northern end, you know, which was part of the 5th Division's job to get. and which they did. Take the Mount Suribachi. I had binoculars, and I did see the flag flying. I just felt that the 5th Division had done a good job, and it had to be tough. Going uphill, and they're shooting down on them, it had to be rough on them. I don't know how many men they lost. Probably part of that 7,800 that we lost. It was a thrill to see it go up, and everybody looked up there through my binoculars. Of course, that was February the 23rd. We had to the March the 16th still to go, But fortunately, I didn't get a scratch on Iwo. I got hit on Saipan, but I didn't get a scratch on Iwo. One thing that was a little impressive, and I've always remembered, after the island was declared ours, and there was no more organized resistance, a friend of mine, Johnny DeStefanis, he said, let's go up to the cemetery. The cemetery group, the burial group, went to work right away. And it was a little distance from where we were, and he said, let's go over and see if we see any names. So we walked up there, and it was impressive. All the crosses were exactly the same size. All the burials were the same size, about 4 feet long, and beveled on all sides, all straight in line, and just thousands of them. And we were looking at the names, and I see in the front was the flagpole, and right behind the flagpole was another grave. And I said, let's go over and see who was that. I thought maybe some general or something. So we walked over there, and when we got up to it, on the crosshead of the cross, everything is exactly like everything else, was the name Brocky, Doberman Pinscher. And it was a war dog that had been killed, and they gave him the same burial as they did the rest of them.
So all the Americans killed on Iwo were buried there?
Mm-hmm. And seeing names that you knew or were acquaintance of, not necessarily friends with, but acquaintance with, young men. That was just pitiful. You're trained in the first place. You go through a lot of rigorous training, but no matter how much training you go through, once it happens, it's different. Where you're shooting at people and you're trying to kill them. Civilized people trying to kill one another. Don't make sense. Freedom is not free.
Edwin Donley was awarded a Purple Heart and Bronze Star for his courageous service during World War II. Warriors in Their Own Words is our attempt to present an unvarnished, unsanitized truth of what we have asked of those who defend this nation. Thank you for watching, and by doing so, honoring those who've served. This program was produced by Evergreen Podcasts and Documentary.tv. I'm your host, Ken Harbaugh. If you've enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, and subscribe below.